So back to the Miriam's book, we're going to finish the identity of spirits, and definitely be able to start the next chapter. There's chapter 25, Evocations. And here's the last few questions that Kardec addressed to the spirits to help us, as he does at the end of this, most of this chapters in this book. He places questions to the spirits as almost like a form to synthesize everything that he had already spoke to us before. So a lot of those things over here is not news, but he got the confirmation of everything that is written. Any questions that he placed to the spirits over here. We're going to finish, hopefully, the identity of spirits. That we are on question 27. Philip, you are the lucky one today.
I won the lottery, huh?
Yeah. Gonna buy a package of halls or lozenges.
Shall I begin?
Yes, please.
27. Through their written communications, do evil spirits sometimes betray themselves with involuntary material physical signs? The really skillful ones, no. The inept ones become confused. Any meaningless or puerile sign is sure to indicate inferiority. High order spirits do nothing useless.
Okay, so just to recap, Kardec asked the spirits before if spirits who less evolved the spirit of any spirits, you would make use of signs of titles and things like that to identify themselves, or to misidentify themselves, as if they try to identify themselves as someone else by using that signs, traits. I don't know, especially in Europe, where they have those symbols of families, of titles, and things like that. So Kardec asks here if spirits would kind of betray themselves, or give themselves up by pretend to be a more evolved spirit, and in the midst of the presentation, present signs, present things that would not be comparable with more evolved spirits. And Kardec answered, the spirits answered that the really skillful ones would not. I mean, the one who were well prepared to try to impersonate someone else, that done the research, that prepared themselves, they would not betray themselves, which would make our work, to identify them a little bit more difficult, but yet we would be able to do so. The ones who are not so well prepared, the ones who did not a good rehearse, I guess, would eventually use some of signs or traits and would betray themselves in that matter. But again, would never see that from high order spirits. High order spirits are completely detached from material things, not material, physical things. So they are completely detached from the need of use signs, signs or titles. Those is way above that. This is for us more ignorant spirits who are still very attached to signs, to titles and things of that sort. 28.
Many mediums recognize good and evil spirits by either a pleasant or disagreeable sensation as they approach. Is a disagreeable impression, a convulsive agitation, or uneasiness always indicative of the evil nature of manifesting spirits? A medium experiences the sensations of the state of the manifesting spirit. When the spirit is happy, its state is peaceful, light, and calm. When unhappy, it is agitated and feverish. And this agitation is naturally transmitted to the medium's nervous system. Moreover, the same applies to humans. Those who are moral display calmness and peace. Those who are evil are always agitated. There are mediums of greater or lesser impressionability. And for that reason, we cannot consider agitation as an absolute rule. Herein, as in everything else, we must take the circumstances into account. The heavy and disagreeable nature of the sensation is produced by contrast, because if the medium's spirit sympathizes with the evil spirit who manifests, it will barely be affected, if at all. However, we must not confuse the speed of writing produced by the extreme flexibility of certain mediums with the convulsive agitation that slower mediums can experience upon contacting imperfect spirits.
So we do understand very well by now that in the process of a psychography or psychophony, there is the integration, the approximation of the two perispirits, the perispirit of the discarnate spirit with the perispirit of the medium. That perispiritus is somewhat expanded from the physical body, which allows that approximation of the two perispirits, that now the spirit can pass its thoughts, energy to the medium, and the medium will write it or will speak it, right? Along with the thought, again, energy, other energies flows through one perispirit to the other. So if the spirit is, let's say, just say melancholic, just sad, the medium will have that perception, that feeling of melancholy, of sadness. If the spirit is angry, rebellious, revolted, the medium will receive those energies and will feel rather bad for that, for the time that communication is going on. If the spirit is feeling ill, if it's, let's say, has complaints of some distress at the abdominal area, the medium may feel actually that. But the other way is also true. Now, the other side of the spectrum is also true. If it's a more evolved spirit, or the spirit of light, the medium will also feel the peace, the goodness that they will describe as indescribable, the kind of state that cannot be put into words, that our verbal communication is very limited to even to express the agreeable sensation that they feel when they are in direct contact, perispirit to perispirit, with a more elevated spirit or spirit of light. So that is one way that we can make a differentiation. We see that every week in our leadership meetings. Kardec points out two things that are very important. One is, in case of the ill feelings that the medium may have of receive the communication of an angry, rebellious, or use the expression evil spirit here, it is produced by the contrast. Because if the medium is also living in that state, then there is no contrast. It's not going to feel any bad because that's what he has already. But in a well organized spiritist mediumship meeting, producing mediumship with Jesus, the medium will be on a more peaceful state of mind. That when something come and disturb that peace, then you have the contrast. Okay, so that's a very important thing to notice. And another thing important, not confuse the speed of the writing. Perhaps the hands is going so fast, and there is a little bit appears to be of some agitation from the part of the medium, and it's just the speed, the way that the medium will write under the influence of the spirit. The very little experience that I have seen is that the hand will be moving at incredible speed, but the rest of the body is an absolute state of tranquility. As opposed, when we see the book Heaven and Hell, when Kardec was interviewing spirits that he qualifies the unhappy spirits, the suffering spirits. At times, they would even break the pen or breaking the pencil with so much rudeness from the part of the spirit that would be expressed on the medium, and things would happen. Question, comments?
I don't have a question about this one, but last week, one of the questions puzzles me because I was probably tired and didn't pay attention.
Okay, which number, remember?
24.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
How do you imitate thought?
Okay, so that is the question that I discussed last week, that I had a question mark on the previous time that I discussed this. And the question is, can't deceiving spirits also imitate thought? And the answer is they imitate thought as theater scenes imitate nature. I said that I do not understand neither the question or the answer.
Okay.
And I still don't. João gave his understanding of it, which is better than mine because mine is 0, but it's still not good enough for me.
I'm sorry. Now that you mention it, I remember that. It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, neither to me neither.
Okay, then don't worry about it.
And what I can tell you is that my answer was inspired because I don't really remember what I said.
It's definitely better than what I have to offer because I have nothing to offer that specific question.
I don't know why that caught my attention, but
And
it
it's
just
interesting that I have the question mark here from the last time.
okay.
I did some reading this time around, and I still can't find anything that would explain, not even the question, or even than the question.
Let's go forward.
Yes,
Yeah,
new chapter. Yes.
We study, I don't know if it was here or if I see somewhere else, regarding technology on mediumship meetings in spiritism. And now we have the tool to record. And I think, thinking about psychography, sometimes, we have you're talking about the speed while the meeting is writing. Sometimes, some mediums can barely read what they, write because it's too fast and something else. And if you record the thought, it's pretty much, I think would be more accurate, let's put that way. Do you see that happen, or you think the psychography itself there's more into it than just to pass the message?
If it's a psychophony, you could record. But
Psychography. Psychography.
How could you record psychography?
I mean, because pretty much you're receiving the thoughts and writing down. You could receive the thoughts and speak the thoughts. It's not like a
Then
cacophony.
this is a cacophony. Then there is a cacophony.
No, but the
In the
cacophony,
process of psychography, the spirit is stimulating the nervous system of the medium to write.
that's what I'm trying to say. And the cacophony, there's that interaction between the spirit and the dialoguer. So there is an interaction back and forth. But on the psychography, the medium is receiving the thoughts in his writing, because that's the tool that the medium has to put into words the thought. But it's still a thought before you actually writing. So you could just speak the thoughts and record that instead writing. I'm just
I don't think we could, because the spirit is using your mechanism in the nervous system for writing. So it's going to be, it's to be written, not to be spoken. So you have the impression that the spirit is dictating things to you. The spirit is not really dictating things to you. You are receiving its thoughts and receiving it directly to the part of the brain that deals with writing. So it's to be written. Otherwise, it's a cacophony.
So it sounds like for psychography, the message is actually bypassing the brain in a sense, bypassing the brain and just going directly to the mechanical movement of the hand holding the pencil or pen and writing.
In a mechanical writing, yes. In a conscious, no, it goes to the conscious. It goes to the cognition as well. But what I'm saying is that it goes to the cognition first, because the spirit intent wants you to write it. So everything is connected to the part of the brain that deals with writing. Even though you may receive the thoughts, interpret the thoughts, you're still going to write it and not speak it in a conscious kind of mediumship. In the case of unconscious or mechanical, then yes, it goes straight into the writing mechanism.
I see. Thank you.
It's not intended to be spoken. It's intended to be written. If the spirit wants it to be spoken, you're gonna use the process of cacophony.
Annette, Francisco Xavier was an unconscious medium. He could receive two separate communications and write with the right and left hand, two different communications. And while he was doing that, he could be talking to you in a third manifestation.
My goodness.
He was an exceptional medium. It's the exception of the exception of the exception, but he was an unconscious medium, just FYI.
Well, he certainly could multitask. My goodness. Thank you.
Just on the one that we just finished, right? The sensations of the mediums when receiving communication. We had a very nice experience the other day, right? One of our mediums for the first time received a communication from a mentor. She's been with us for some years, and after we asked her what was the difference, and she said the difference was that it was so pleasant.
No pain this time.
No pain this time.
Hmm.
All right.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, we can do start chapter 25 evocations, I think. I would like to read 269, and then we can talk about a little bit.
Okay. Spirits can communicate either spontaneously or by answering our call, i.e., they can be evoked. Some persons think that spirits should not be evoked at all, that it is preferable to wait for one who wants to communicate. They believe that in calling a certain spirit, we cannot be sure that it is who it claims to be, whereas one who comes on its own initiative better proves its identity, since it thus shows its desire to converse with us. In our view, that is a mistake. First of all, because we are always surrounded by spirits, most of whom are less evolved and who are eager to communicate. Second, it is for that very reason that if we do not evoke a particular spirit, we open the door for all those who would like to enter. In any assembly where no one in particular is given the floor, it would be open to everyone, and we know what the results of that would be. By directly appealing to a certain spirit, we establish a link between us. We have called it by our will and thus have set up a sort of barrier to intruders. Without a direct appeal, a spirit would often have no reason to come to us unless it was our own familiar spirit. Both of these types of evocation have their advantages, however, and there would only be problems if one of them were excluded. Spontaneous communications present no problems when we are in control of the spirits and are certain that we do not allow evil ones to dominate. So it is almost always appropriate to await the willingness of the spirits who want to manifest, because in this way, their thought does not experience any restraint and we can receive admirable communications, whereas a spirit who is evoked may not be disposed to communicate at all or might be incapable of communicating in the way we want it to. Moreover, the scrupulous examination that we have advised is a guarantee against bad communications. During regular spiritist meetings, especially when a sequential work is involved, there are always spirits who come without our having to call them, for the simple reason that they are accustomed to the regularity of the sessions. They nearly always appear spontaneously to address some subject, develop a theme, or provide guidance. In such cases, it is easy to recognize them, whether by their language, because it is always the same, by their writing, or by certain particular habits.
Visual of evocation. First of all, I have to note, we should note over here the elaboration of the book, the methodology, scientific methodology of Kardec. That before he presents us evocation, he presented the chapter of identity of spirits, of means to identify and means to kind of classify spirits as even more or less evolved, or deserving or less deserving our attention and considerations. You need to be right. I mean, if you're going to evoke spirits, you have to have a methodology that gives us degree of confidence that the one that revoked is the one who is speaking and not someone else trying to fool us, trying to play with us, or try to deceive us. So throughout this book, you see the sequence of chapters that one is dependent on the previous one. In order to evoke someone, you have to have tools to make sure that the one that you evoked, you have reasonable confidence that the one that you evoke is the one that is speaking. And not to have any kind of reasoning, you have to have some learning before it. We do practice evocation in many different ways. In our prayer, if you pray for our spiritual guide to be with us, because you can call that an evocation. We will separate prayers, things like that, from an evocation to not give an idea that we are offering means of communication of spirits in a mediumship or any mediumistic phenomenon. But in a sense, we evoke even Jesus Christ in our prayers, be with us, help us. Well, we're evoking Jesus Christ here. But I'm saying that make a differentiation because these questions always comes up. And yes, perhaps when we pray and we call for the good spirits to be with us, when we call Jesus to assist us, to provide spirits, is that an evocation? We're going to differentiate prayer from evocation here. Okay, but yeah, we call Jesus, we call our protecting spirit, but we're going to reserve the word evocation specifically for the phenomena of mediumship. Okay. Kardec used evocation continuously throughout his work. The book Heaven and Hell is 100% a product of evocation. Kardec would receive cases from, of course, discarnate spirits, individuals who died in this and that situation, and would receive requests from family members to see if they could get some news from this or that departed loved one. And they would actually in his Paris society, his mediumship meetings, they actually evoke spirits. The whole book, if you go to Heaven and Hell, is through evocation. They would make a prayer, they would ask for assistance, and then they would say if such and such spirit is able, is willing, would now make him or herself present for conversation. Sometimes the spirits would come in or would be brought in. Most of the time, the suffering spirit usually be brought in. On the side of the high or the happy spirit, the spirits would come in. And that's how the book was actually produced. And there's just a few, right? Because if you go through to the magazine, to the Spirits Review, there's many other cases of evocations that Kardec writes about. That was not part of the book. So one can imagine that Kardec did tremendous amount of evocation. And I'm sure a lot of evocation resulted in nothing, because we can call as much as we want. If the spirit does not want to show up or it's not brought to the place, it's not going to happen. And I'm sure that in this process of evocation, they have to use the methodology of identity of spirit to be comfortable that indeed the spirit they evoke is one that is speaking. And I'm sure that in so many trials of evocation, there was one other that tried to fool them. So it was something that was necessary, in order to create this doctrine, to put all the codification together. Evocation was necessary. Now, as I said, a lot of people dislike the idea of evoking spirit. And I'll decline that it does depend on the kind of mediumship meetings do you do, what kind of work do you do. If you're doing a more scientific kind of of work associated with mediumship, if you want to kind of understand brain physiology during mediumship, so to say, we're going to have to evoke spirits who understand the matter, who knows the matter. We just spoke the first part of these stories today, that if I'm in a state of somnambulism and I go to the spiritual world, and let's say I see physical organs, if I don't know anything about anatomy, physiology, it means nothing to me. I could not report anything. But when André always reports the function of the brain, when he's able to tell about the blood flow in specific glands, this and that, because he knows anatomy, he's a doctor. So it makes some sense. So it does make sense to evoke in a specific kind of work. For the kind of mediumship work, there is work of assistance, of suffering, of difficult spirits, we would not evoke. You would allow the spiritual mentors of the house to bring the spirits who are able to benefit for a communication. If they will or they will not, it's up to them. But if they are brought to the meetings because they are able to, so we do not evoke directly spirits. We do invoke indirectly, especially on the first meeting of the month, that we ask to receive spirits associated with members of the group. No specific name, but is an indirect form of evocation because spirits associate with the members of the group. And of course, we are open to receive any other spirit that it is or is not associated with members of the group because of the nature of the work that we do. And when we say members associate, spirits associate with members of the group, the spirits who may be in some kind of need of help. Not going to invite those who doesn't need any help, because the nature of the work that we do is not for that. It would be nice to receive such and such and have a communication with a loved one. That would be nice, but that's not the purpose and of the meeting that we have. Kardec suggests that evoking has its advantages. One is that it has some kind of order, right? We are always surrounded by spirits. There is no empty space. If you just say, oh, we have a medium over here that is ready to receive whoever comes first, well, it can become a circus. Now, if we make a more direct evocation, we would like to receive here the spirit of such and such. And then we give a name. And if the spirit is able, willing, the spirit will communicate. And then we go to the process of identifying make sure that we speak with the right person, the right spirit. Or you can make a more indirect evocation. In case again, let's say if you're doing stories that require some understanding of physics, you may evoke spirits who are versed in the science of physics, who could provide us some assistance in the studies. Is also an evocation, but now without a name. It's more open for those who are versed in the science of physics. So evocation does have its use. One negative aspect that it puts limitation. One negative aspect is that we may evoke someone who is not in condition. I evoke such and such spirit, again, I want to talk to you, and the spirit kind of receives the call, but is in a horrible situation. They cannot come and address the call. That may create even more difficulty to that spirit. Both of these types of evocation, I think, is a mistake here that correct is wrong. There shouldn't be both of type of communication, right? Because the two types, one is vocation, the other is spontaneous communication. So I think you have to make the correction there.
Where, Elmo?
Based on the second paragraph, is that both of this type of evocation
Both of this style, oh, communication. Yeah.
should be communication there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so not all the spirits are in position of attending our calls. Love Grandpa very much. I'd love to hear a message, receive a message from Grandpa. Well, Grandpa may be in a state of distress. Grandpa may still be in a state of perturbation secondary to recent discarnation. Grandpa may receive the calls, and because Grandpa loves us so much but is not position, it may create more distress. It's gonna bring Grandpa back down to the materiality, to the physicality that he does not need at this moment. So evoking could be a dangerous things for the spirit who is unprepared, but will receive the call but cannot attend to it. So we have to be careful as well to not cause more harm to a spirit who is already in a difficult situation. On regular meetings that is attended by a regular group of incarnate and discarnate, there is almost no need for evocation anymore. Everybody knows the work, everybody knows what to do. There is distribution of position of label for everyone, that by the time if evocation is used and the spirit is evoked to speak, it already knows what's going to be asked. It's already provided the answer even before the question is placed. I think that's it. Questions?
There is the case of the book Between Heaven and Earth, right? It's not really a medium evocation for a spiritual communicate, but a prayer that the daughter sends to her mother, right? That it's in no condition to come. But the prayer is answered because the girl deserves the assistance. So I forgot how do you call those prayers, but the mother is in the process of obsessing the stepmother, right? So, when you do an evocation, you can always receive the assistance you need, even if you misdirect the evocation, right, in a prayer or in a that it's, you know, what you mentioned, that we're not talking about it exactly in this subject, but it's I thought it was important to bring.
Yeah, that's a good point. What that young lady did was basically both, right? It was a part prayer, part evocation, almost, right? As be here, do this, right? But I think it's important that we make a separation of evocation as a process in mediumship than a prayer as a call to a loved one or something in prayer, because you're not really evoke in a sense that we really want to have a communication with them. And if you do, then it is evocation. If you think that it's okay, it's cool to evoke grandma or grandpa to give a communication, then it is an evocation. I just think it's not, most of the time, it's not a smart thing to do. Leadership, there is a place, a time, an environment to be done. It should not be done casually for all the obvious reasons. And perhaps the one that you're calling may even be placed in a more difficult situation than he or she may already is. I know you have the idea that loved ones are always perfect and gonna be in heaven, but unfortunately, that's not always the case.
So in a serious meeting, or maybe in the case of Kardec, or or some sort of a codification books or whatever. So who decide which spirit's going to be called? Because it seems to me that the spiritual benefactors, they know better who we should call. So then it's almost like non-fail situation, because if we decide, we don't know who's better. Even if you're calling, for example, a scientist to talk about something, maybe we call Einstein, but Einstein is not the best suit to do whatever, and the mentors will be who will know who will be the best to do the task. So who decides which spirit to evoke on a serious mediumship, right?
Serious mediumship, we do, especially if it's a serious mediumship, we do. I mean, the work of mediumship done here by incarnate is done by incarnate.
But we don't know.
Well, yeah, that's right. We don't know. So if it's not appropriate, it's not going to happen. If you insist, bad things may happen. But the decision is ours. Because if you just say, "Oh, you guys know better, you guys take care of it," it's no longer an evocation. Then it becomes like our meetings, a rescue meeting, which the mentors know who is in a better position to benefit from a communication. It's not an evocation, or it is evocation. If it's an evocation, we incarnate, we evoke. No, we're not gonna get right all the time. We're gonna get really wrong sometimes. So let's say Kardec, let's go back to heaven and hell. He read the news of the case of that individual who died in this situation or something kind of different. And I would like, and Kardec has the idea that he wants to evoke that spirit who died in that situation, because he has a few questions related to the spirit of the whole situation itself. Kardec, we go to evoke that spirit. No, you make the prayers and we ask if it's possible, and now you'd like to have the presence of such and such a spirit. Now, the ones that we know that happened are published in the book, are published in the the Spirits Review magazine, but I'm sure there was another hundreds that did not happen, that they evoked and nothing happened. So we go to our meetings next week and I say, I wanted to evoke my mother. Well, I can evoke as much as I want. I have a decision. I want to evoke my mother. We don't do that. Just an example, right? We don't do evocations in our meetings. But I decided I want to speak to my mother. I want my mother to speak to me through one of our mediums. The decision is done by the group. We incarnate, we want to evoke my mother. Now the mentors say, yeah, not a good idea. Or nah, mom is not ready, or whatever. Or it may happen also. But we do the evocation. Evocation comes to us, from us, otherwise it's not an evocation. You get right sometimes, you get wrong many times.
Okay. I found it. It's called diverted prayer or diverted
Yeah,
prayer.
diverted prayer, yes. Okay, you understand the difference, Renato? If it's
So
up to the
it's
if it's
so
up to the mentors, it's not only the vocation anymore.
yeah, but you know, it's so at least on my perspective, it's so subtle that let's say I want to invoke my mom, but the mentors think that is not the best. So I'm not controlling the vocation anyway. So let's say, okay, let's invoke my father. Oh, okay, your father you can invoke because this is gonna be good for everyone. So in the end, I'm doing the vocation, but I'm getting what it's best. So to me, it's like, let me just ask the mentors what's the best suitable to get what we need in order to move on, instead me evoking a bunch of, that, it's not going to be good for everyone, because in the end, I know that, we don't like too much that word, but they will allow or not the communication to happen or not. So
Then you cannot call it a vocation anymore. So you say that you should not do a vocation.
no, I'm saying that, let's say, as I was saying, I evoke my mom. Nothing happens because my mom is
Right.
in condition, right? So
Mhm.
then I evoke my dad. Okay,
Right.
my dad is in condition because they, the mentor think is the best fit. So here, me thinking is, why would I go to the list of people that I think will be best for certain task, in order to just cut to the chase and ask them, listen, we want to accomplish this. Who do you think is best suited for this? And then they can say, listen, you can try this, and that. And then we evoke one of those, something like that. I don't know.
No, you want to put all the board responsibility in the hands of the mentors. No, we are responsible. We are part of the work ourselves. You call, I want to evoke my mom. My mom didn't show up. Now I want to evoke my daddy. Oh, daddy shows up. I want to evoke my grandpa. Grandpa shows up. It's I'm doing the evocation, and the workers of the house will see if it's possible or not. But the evocation comes from me. I want to evoke my mom. No, mom is not in condition. So can I evoke daddy? Yeah, I can evoke daddy. But I'm invoking. I'm telling them what I want. And then they'll see if it's possible or not. It's what I want. It's not what they want. Now they're gonna go along with my wants or not.
So
It's
what do
my
I,
invocation. It's my decision I want to call such and such a spirit. And then they will decide if they're gonna go along with my idea or not. Otherwise, it's not an evocation.
so if I evoke my mom and nothing happened, what do I learn from that?
Well, you learn that they didn't like the idea, that mom is not in condition, the mom doesn't need that, or that's not the appropriate time. Thousands of possibilities. Mom is too busy, high sphere of existence, doing a much bigger work to be chatting with us right now. I mean, there's so many possibilities. I'm not going to make any conclusion out of it because they didn't tell me. If they tell me, then I'll know.
Okay.
Point is, an evocation is what we, the incarnate, calls. I pick up the phone and I call someone. Direct to someone. Not that someone will pick up or not. Otherwise, it's not an evocation. Otherwise, it's the work that we do in our Monday's meetings, that we have mediums able, ready to receive whatever the spiritual directors choose to bring to the meeting. It's spontaneous. It is spontaneous or is evoked. If it's evoked, the call comes from us. Now, should we do it because we don't know better? Yes, we should. We learn from mistakes. You're going to be afraid of not doing things because you may get it wrong. Yes, you're going to get wrong 1,000 times. I mean, Shukadek got wrong 1,000 times when he make evocations and this people say, yeah, try another one. This one's not available.
But how can you get wrong if you have good intentions in doing right and you are in a serious environment? When you say,
one thing is not to do with the other. Because like in the meeting, my problem, we had read a case in the newspaper, or a family member sent him a letter say, oh, I have this case of my cousin. He discarded, I don't know, 15 years ago, and this is the scenario, this is what's happened. We'd love to know something about him. Can you try to evoke that and see if you got some news? Because like, yeah, we can try. So he goes to his meeting, full of good intention to help that spirit, to help that family that's sending a letter, and may not receive anything from them. For many possibilities. I don't know what's the cause. Was not the proper time, the spirit is in no condition, would be more harmful to the family, would be more harmful to that spirit, or the spirit is way too elevated to attend to our calls. 1,000 possibilities. But we tried with good intention in a well-organized work.
Thank you.
Point is, it is a vocation or is it spontaneous? The spontaneous, the spirit will come in on its own, or will be brought in by the spirits. Evoked, we call, we ask for the presence. It may show up, it may doesn't.
Towards the end of the mediumship meeting, when you dialoguers ask for any messages from the mentors, is that a vocation as well?
You could say, an indirect evocation. Those who are able to provide us a message, they speak now. Yeah, it's an indirect evocation. And it's indirect because we didn't call it a specific name. If you say, Paul of Tarsus, can you please give us a message? One of those nice letters that you wrote to those people over there in Greece. Can you write one of those for us now? If he's willing, he may do so. But they say, nah, Paul is too busy right now. But you have one of your mentors that can give you a message that is good for you. But in our end of our meetings, we open the meeting now to receive a message from our mentors. It is an indirect evocation with it.
Do we ever did a direct evocation then, or always was a general?
I don't recall ever doing giving any direct evocations for evolved or suffering spirits. Indirect, again, on the Mondays that we are open, or the first Mondays that you like to receive spirits associated to members, indirect evocation. And at the end of the meeting, we opened the room for the to receive enlightened messages. Indirect. Direct, I don't recall.
Don't recall also.
Huh? Yeah. Again, it depends on the nature of the work. The nature of work does not require direct evocation. So a direct evocation now is more limited to a very specific topic, a very specific field of science, a very specific kind of work. Let's say they do work of spiritual surgeries, and you work with a specific spirit that performs the procedures. Is an evocation, get an evoke doctor such and such. Like they all have German names, I don't know why, to be the spiritual doctor who will perform those procedures. It's an evocation, but it's again a very specific field of work and of study.
And the evocation is always from incarnate to a discarnate, right?
Leadership meeting, yes.
It's not like, for example, when we have spirits that, for the lack of a better word, evocate us here to do certain work or to go to places to do a certain task. That's not evocation. There's another word for that. Right?
Now, in the now stories of mediumship, we're going to reserve the word evocation for we incarnate ask for the presence of a specific medium, spirit, to communicate with us. All right, well, that's pretty much up. It was a good discussion. We continue item 27 next week. Finish it our prayers. Let's give thanks to God, our Father, Creator, and the Provider of all things. We give thanks to our Master Jesus Christ, to our spiritual benefactors for the blessings, for the assistance they received. And we ask for protection, for guidance throughout the week, helping us to be vigilant with our sentiments, with emotions, with our thoughts. How to be inspired throughout the week. To seek to elevate ourselves above our vices, to resist the temptations that we meet along the way. To be able to practice charity to the best of our abilities. And at this time, also marked disturbances throughout the planet. At this time that we need Jesus in our lives more than ever. We ask, beloved Master, that you help us to do our share to contribute with our very limited capabilities to vibrate peace, harmony for all peoples, for every single part of this world, that the leaders of the small, the minute communities, as well as the leaders of the big communities, may choose to unite for better distribution of the wealth, for elimination of all wars, so we can transform our planet into a world where goodness shall prevail over evil. Let us do our part. Let us pacify ourselves. And with this in mind, ask permission to close this meeting. So.